Hello and welcome to Economic Forum, where we discuss various issues affecting our economy in Zimbabwe. In this program, we look at matters to do with tourism, manufacturing, human resources, capital, and many other aspects of life, also including education and health. We discuss them here and see what impact they bring on the economy. My name is John Masubu. Zimbabwe's dynamic economic landscape has been characterized by the rapid growth of the informal sector, and this has challenged some of the traditional businesses that we have known over the years. They seem to be almost crumbling, and a lot of remedies are being tried. But we want to understand where this has come from, what models they were using, and what suggestions can be made in order for them to resuscitate. And our guest here is Paul Banda, who is going to be helping us go through all that in order to understand the current situation and also look at how the supply chain can be improved. Welcome to Economic Forum.
Thank you so much, John.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Just tell us about the current picture we are seeing, where the big retail organizations, or some of them, are facing these challenges and the informal sector is rising. What brought about all that?
Definitely, John, there's been a shift in the way we've been shopping. There's been a shift in how people have been wanting to spend their money. And generally, the traditional supply chain, it's an academic concept that we've been following. But it seems to be breaking down because now there are emergent players and emergent economic forces that are forcing people to spend differently and vote with their money where they would like to spend it. And also there's been some inflexibility as well also with the traditional retail sectors or traditional retail giants in adapting to these emergent economic forces and factors.
Why do you think this was not foreseen or foretold?
To be honest, I think it was. I think it was a matter of comfort for the giant retailers. This has been coming for some time. Our trade numbers, informal trade numbers with South Africa, which is our biggest trade partner, have been growing. 20 years ago, we were doing $1 billion on the informal sector, on the informal cross-border sector into Zimbabwe. As of now, it's $3.3 billion. So those numbers have been steadily rising for a while. Also, there is issues to do with, what happened after 2008. The government had to open up import licenses for food to the general public in 2008, again in 2014, and also again in 2022. So that opened up opportunities for the informal trader to be a serious economic force in the economy.
How about the pricing?
The pricing, I've always said this, much to the chagrin of my educated colleagues, that our supply chain was bloated and that made things expensive for the consumer. At every point within our supply chain, we were marking up and we were forward pricing. So the manufacturer, forward prices, the wholesaler, the distributor, everybody was marking up at some point within the supply chain. So it made the product arrive in the hands of the consumer at an untenable price because everybody has marked up and everybody has forward priced. What has happened, however, with the informal retailer is coming straight from the manufacturer, very little stops along the way, into the hands of the consumer. Yes. So that price dynamic, yes.
And broadly, how has this impacted on our economy?
There are many people who are crying that we are becoming an informalized economy. I don't share the sentiment that it's a bad thing. I think redistributing the economy to individual players is not a bad thing in general. I think this is good for the economy in the long run. The smaller retailer who is compliant is definitely the bigger guy tomorrow. The non-compliant informal retailer, to be honest with you, is a flash in the pan. They do not have a business to talk about. They're taking advantage of what is happening within the economy right now. Those are not economic forces that are going to last. But definitely the smaller retailer who's compliant is definitely who we're looking to be able to build the economy up tomorrow.
Yes. Let's just do a checklist of what has come about
Yes.
as this disintegration is going on, the disintegration of the traditional supply chain model.
So what has happened is definitely now consumers and smaller retailers are going straight to the manufacturer to buy. The manufacturer is also liking it because now they get paid instantly, right away, and sometimes in the currency that they prefer. Also, because there is no now delays with distribution or selling, those expenses with warehousing and distribution, logistics, have also been removed. So it's almost there is now a direct relationship between the manufacturer and the consumer or the retailer, and that has disintegrated the supply chain in that way. You will find that at some point in this country, something can cost more that is manufactured in Zimbabwe, cost more in this country, but it's cost less outside the country. And you're like, okay, so where's the problem there? The problem has been our supply chain and how bloated and expensive it's been. So that's gradually being taken down, for better or for worse. But yes.
Yes. How about this informality bringing in goods that actually counterfeit, that are now being destroyed?
That is actually a very good point to bring out. One of the side effects of having all this informality and allowing the smaller retailers to sell directly to consumer is counterfeit goods. In other parts of Africa, in West Africa, for instance, it went unchecked for a long time that it is very hard to distinguish between the genuine product and something that is not genuine. So it's important for government and the enforcers, ZIMRA, to check this one in the bud, because it as an issue, it could grow to levels where we will not be able to have manufacturers thrive in this country.
That's Paul Banda.
Yes.
He's a business strategist, and we are discussing how the traditional models of the supply chain have disintegrated and what has come about. And we're also going to look into the future as to how we can then design models for survival. So join us in the second segment of Economic Forum. In the last segment, we're looking at some of the things that have caused the disintegration of the traditional supply chain model. We're going to continue with that in this second segment of Economic Forum, where we've got our guest here, who is Paul Banda. He's a business strategist. You also want to go into other issues that actually affected the supply chain, like communication and technology, among others.
Absolutely. Now we can order online. This has been happening in other countries for a while, in a very large way. Now it's slowly taking over. Now we can order online straight from the manufacturer as well. So that has also disintegrated the academic concept of the supply chain as we know it.
Is there a way of responding to that?
Absolutely.
If I feel that is threatening my business.
Absolutely. We are now, and unfortunately or fortunately, in a tech-oriented world. So now it's important for these brands and these companies to have a tech-forward thinking or a tech-forward management style where we understand the consumer now is... they understand convenience. They want to be able to order things from their phone and have things delivered. And as an economy in Zimbabwe, as we're growing, things like last mile delivery, warehousing solutions, and so on, these are things that are coming up and becoming accessible to everybody. You can order something on a bike today. So that's also important as a business to be able to adapt to these new systems, because this is now what consumers want. Whoever is able to move first and effectively, particularly with technology, will definitely emerge as a winner.
But over and above that, there are also some inefficiencies in the supply chain which need to be propped up a little bit. Which ones are those?
I would say what has happened traditionally, I think I mentioned it, the forward pricing that we've been doing, in in the supply chain. It was not working for us. It was making things extremely expensive for the average consumer. There's that. But also, if you are in emerging manufacturing, there's no better time right now than to be a manufacturer, because now you can get your products into the hands of the consumer very quickly, without delay and without too many inefficiencies within the supply chain.
Maybe we also want to engage some of the policies that were introduced during the monetary policy statement of making sure that these informal businesses register, they've got point of sale machines, and they avoid, in most cases, paying tax. But this time around, the regulation is such that it will be very difficult.
That was actually brilliant in my thinking, to have all of these emerging retailers be able to register. It addresses two issues. Number one, it addresses our tax issue, and then it addresses the issue that we have at the border. Because if you cannot prove how you imported this and that you paid tax, it also addresses the porosity of our borders, which has been an issue with these, particularly informal retailers. Things have been coming in with no tax. And then they come through and they are much cheaper, unreasonably cheap, providing an unfair competition to the traditional retailer.
What has been the state of the consumer purchasing power within all these changes?
So it has actually increased. I think one of the drivers definitely is where the consumers are choosing to spend their money, and they're choosing to spend their money where products are cheaper. So you find that in a suburb or in a particular area, when they go to these tuck shops, they are not looking for brand specific items. So if they're looking for washing powder, they're not looking for a particular washing powder, they're looking for washing powder. Normally they're looking for the cheapest washing powder. And that has given the consumer a lot more spending power. And that has been the biggest advantage, I think, as a shaker to the traditional models.
So Paul, let's look at the disadvantages to the consumer.
Absolutely. So the issue of counterfeit goods and expired goods to the consumer, those pose a very serious health risk to the consumer. They sometimes are not able to discern what is expired and what is not. So they are falling into the hands of unscrupulous retailers that are giving them expired goods or goods that they know to be counterfeit. So that has definitely been a major disadvantage. The major retailers would normally not make that mistake at all, because they are held by certain compliance laws. These ones are not, and they are finding ways to skirt those to the disadvantage of the consumer.
Yes. Do you see this kind of policing actually being efficiently done all over the country, be it in mining areas, rural areas, and so forth, or it's targeting the main cities?
It's definitely for now targeting the main cities, but it should expand. We are experiencing a disruption, and whenever there's disruption, there's chaos. It's up to the regulatory authorities to sort of quell in the chaos that's happening now. This has been as a result of economic forces beyond anybody's control. So it's important for the regulatory authorities to say, to educate the consumer on what they are buying, and also on the part of the manufacturers to educate the consumer on what their brand is supposed to look like, what it tastes like, and so on, so that they're not given these counterfeit and fake products.
Yes. In these circumstances, how do we continue to promote locally produced products, when there's such competition, and also with the consumer looking for cheaper goods, and yet we want to uplift our own industries?
It is actually a very difficult dance in being able to do that. Any economy like ours relies heavily on manufacturing, but manufacturing is becoming difficult because there's an influx of things from outside the country. I understand the policy behind being able to import food as individuals. We have at some point in the country been food insecure, but it is hurting us when it comes to manufacturing, and also the fact that we're using the US dollar. It is also hurting us. It is a good idea always to have a country that prefers its own products. In Zimbabwe, generally, we have always preferred our own brands. That's why our own brands have done well here. So it's very difficult for the local manufacturers now. The USD and the influx of cheaper goods that they cannot compete with because their overheads and their expenses are also in the US dollar.
And how can we innovate? And how are these innovation hubs going to help us in that regard so that we go back to fruitful or beneficial manufacturing?
I don't think we'll ever be able to go back. I think we are at an important point in our economy where things cannot go back, things can only move forward. And the way forward, I would say, is responding effectively to these market forces with good enough regulation. It's important to adapt to what the market is saying. In strategy, we always say that the market is always right, all the time. The market is never wrong. So you just adapt to what the market is saying and adapt with regulation and compliance.
Well, that's Paul Banda. He's a business strategist, and today we are looking at how the supply chain has disintegrated and resultantly what has been happening in business with the rise of the informal sector and also the challenges that are being faced by the leading or once leading chain stores. So when we come back, we want to look at some of the recommendations that can take us forward as a country. So join us in the third and final segment of Economic Forum. Well, in today's program, we have looked at various issues that have seen the rise of the informal sector and also the decline of some of the well-known chains or supermarket chains and how they can come up with some new models. In fact, with some of them, there have also been changes even at management level. And that's what we're discussing here with our guest, who is Paul Banda. Paul Banda is a business strategist, and he has been sharing his views and also his observations about what has been happening. But you still have many more in this segment, which is the final segment. How can we move forward? What are your recommendations for us to go forward and everyone to benefit?
Absolutely. So innovation. It's a dramatically changing landscape. There are economic forces beyond our control. And so as businesses, particularly for the giant retailers, it's innovation. Innovation in technology, innovation in distribution. But most importantly, maybe marketing insights. Hearing from the consumer. And I think that's one thing that our businesses have not been able to do. Hearing from the consumer and hearing from people on the ground on what is happening. Some of these demise of these giant retailers were predicted some time ago by people on the ground because they could see that the market forces happening and maybe that the C-suite might not have access to. So it's important to go out and find out from a business consultants, from the market, what they want as well.
Let's actually look at what can be done. If we can list some of these things of what can actually be done by these people or by these organizations so that they don't sink.
Okay, great. Number one, making their products tech first. We are in a technology-driven era. In other words, we should be able to order these things and have them delivered to us. They should be able to, for instance, know what you buy every week from a particular retailer, particularly if you go to the same one. They should be able to know that this is what you normally buy per month and maybe send you a message and say, would you like us to deliver the same things again this week? They should be able to know who you are as a customer. Traditionally, you are just a customer that has come to the shop. They don't know when you return next time that it's you again who's returning. They don't know the next time that Paul returns to say, Paul is now buying diapers. Paul must have a baby now. And so on. So they don't know the customer. So they need to know the customer. And thirdly, they need to go where the consumers are now. There was a time when we were comfortable driving into town, taking a combi into town to go and buy groceries. That time has passed. People want their groceries where they are, where they live.
While you're explaining that, Paul,
Yes.
there's also an issue of generational gaps.
Yes.
Some of those who are still running businesses
Yes.
may not be of your age.
It's true.
They would be closer to me and so forth. Now, let's look at the capacity to do that. For you to go to the owner and actually advise them to be tech savvy.
True. So it is very important to have the generational divide cut across by having younger people or people who are more in touch with what's happening these days. It is difficult to be able to do that in a formal setting at work for the smaller guys to go straight to the CEO. But these CEOs can consult. They can reach out to people like myself, where we can go and we can give them insights on what exactly is happening on the ground. What do the people want? And we go out and we search for insights that are important to their business.
Mm-hmm. Now, how about financial inclusion? Is it balanced?
So certainly there hasn't been for financial inclusion. The smaller retailer is at a disadvantage. They live on a hand-to-mouth, and instead of treating these guys as a pariah to the economy, I think, like I said earlier, these are the guys that will be driving our economy tomorrow. I think it's important to support them as long as they are formalized, as long as they are in compliance. It's important to support them and reduce some of the barriers to entry for financial help in what they're trying to do. There's nothing wrong as long as they are in compliance with what the government is doing. There is a net gain if the economy is widely distributed amongst everyone and not just in the hands of a few. So it's important also to empower these retailers as they're coming up, because they are definitely going to be driving business for us tomorrow. Every big business that you know today was once a small business. So it's important to also look at them in all the various fields and give them some support.
Yes. How about growing niche markets? Is this something that helps to say, I'm Paul and I'm known for this?
Absolutely. There's a score called an economic complexity index, where it measures how complex an economy is according to what they put out and the knowledge that they have. Zimbabwe is very low on that index. I think it's the lowest in Southern Africa. It's important for people to have niche businesses and niche areas that they know, to say, this is my area of specialty. We all can't be employed, unfortunately. And being employed makes us all of us being employed makes us very down. We need people that are coming out in smaller businesses and growing.
Well, that's our guest, Paul Banda, who has been with us here. He has been discussing about the supply chain disintegration and how it has impacted on the informal sector, which is growing, as well as the formal businesses which are facing challenges, and they are now trying to rehabilitate themselves so that they do not sink. If you have any questions that you'd like to put across to Paul here, or any other guests who have come to Economic Forum, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on the screen. You can also engage with us so that we bring them back and they answer some of the questions that you have on the social media platforms that again are showing on your screen. If you happen to have missed some of the episodes of Economic Forum, you can watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So on behalf of our guest here, Paul Banda, who has really opened our minds and also recommended how we can go forward in the area of supply chain, coming up with new models, and the production crew, this is John Masugu wishing you happy viewing.